are on silent. I'm not saying you can't take important calls, but please let's be mindful of our guest speakers who are presenting. They took time out of their busy schedule to be here, so let's please afford them some courtesy in that regard. Like I said before, we were trying to see if we could get some senior management in place. I see senior QS here, Chief QS, acting Chief Engineer, so I believe, and then I see a Director of Physical Planning. Thank you. Yeah. So I guess we could start. We could start with them in place of the normal. So today, presenting we're going to have a presentation from Inland Revenue. The presenters, I'm going to introduce the presenters. We are going to have two presenters, Mr. Dexter Fernando and Ms. LePage Gardner. Dexter Fernando serves as the supervisor of the business license unit within the Department of Inland Revenue, an agency within the Ministry of Finance where Mr. Fernando was previously posted. He brings with him a wealth of knowledge within the area of inland revenue collection and compliance. Ms. Gardner serves as supervisor of the General Processing Unit within the Department of Inland Revenue. This unit encompasses two major tax type value-added tax and business licenses with a keen focus on compliance, reporting, and declaration relative to each of these subunits. Ms. Gardner brings with her a wealth of knowledge in VAT compliance and tax compliance certificate application procedures. So without any further ado, can we welcome, I think, to the minute first would be Mr. Fernando with his presentation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
May I first yield and introduce some of the individuals in the front seat who are here with us. You can hear me? First of all, the Chief Valuation Officer and the Director of Inland Revenue, Ms. Gaynell Rowe. My boss, her assistant who was in charge of operations, Shonda Strawn. And one of our legal advisors, and also he's in charge of our policy unit, who comes with a wealth of information, Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants, Mr. Keith Worrell. So specifically today, I'm going to talk about the business license. I understand. Okay, they're asking me to make sure I use the mic. Specifically today, I'm talking about the process of business license. We are at different levels. We are talking to both practitioners, and we are also the regulator of the Ministry of Works, and how we can better work together in this environment. So one of the things that I would like to stress today is that if you are in taxable services within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, you need a valid business license. All right? And so what we call valid, that means something that is current. If you are generating revenue from some taxable service, you need a valid business license. And for that to happen, we require some documentation. And that documentation is covered in the Business License Act of 2010. And if you go onto our webpage, inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs, that is there. Now, once you are in the industry, we expect you every year to file. The Act talks about that you should submit a business license return. That's all your total revenue for that period by January 31st of the following year. We have, for the ease of doing business, allowed it to be one-stop shop. So previously you went out there, you got your national insurance letter from some of your contractors, you went down to Ministry of Works and got your permit for your vendors for your heavy equipment documents. And then you would bring that to us. What we've made the ease for those in the public is that they can start the process here. And then we will only reject if the industry tells us that you're not compliant. So one thing we want to say is that even though you're submitting every year, you should be current with your national insurance, correct? You should be in good standings with Ministry of Works. And so there are some things that we call inside your business license that says what is in purview, and at the bottom of this states there are classifications of what a company is operating as. So Mr. Zonical, I wouldn't say Mr. Zonical, the physical planning unit of the Ministry of Works tells us what you've been approved to do. All right? So physical planning tells us that this is what you've been approved to do in this zone. Ministry of Works building permit says that this building is sound and able to do this type of work here. So when you come to the Ministry of Finance, that being the Department of Inland Revenue, we can only approve a nature that has been approved by the regulator. All right? So I cannot approve you to be a doctor. Or you could have one license saying I am doctor, contractor, landscaper, architectural engineer, because there are different boards that govern all of these services. We're on the same page? And they require a separate business license and different requirements. So I cannot be a doctor and only thinking I have no need to stop by environmental health to figure out how you're disposing the needles of a use. Because there is another regulatory agency that's covering that service. So what we do, the Department of Inland Revenue, is to ensure that you are in good standing. So there are two types of registration we have with business license. You either are a TIN only, that means that you're not a VAT registrant, and you have declared to us that your turnover every year is less than $100,000. And we say this year, the Bahamas government has made, the policymakers have made the decision, when you renew, your business license is free. I had to say it's free. Once you submit a declaration of your turnover, and if it's under $100,000, it is free. Business license for this year, and also a new business is free. So there is a catch. It says that you have to declare. And the Business License Act says by January 31st, you should declare what you have submitted as your turnover for last year. From January 1st to December 31st, you should have declared the total revenue, not your net profit or what you make afterwards, the total revenue of your business for that year. And we all know, I'll say right now, if you have a business and you know that you are close to that $100,000, what is best and advisable to do? Register to be a what, right? So VAT, once you're above 100,000 or close to near that, you know that your taxable services. I have 3 contracts with the Ministry of Works. You know you're going close to the edge. Unless you only doing work with government, you need to start registering. Right? Hello?
Yes.
Yep.
So if we get the information from National Insurance and National Insurance say you hire 10 people or that, and you subcontracting, the person you subcontracting submitting more than you, we're not on the same page. Right? Hello? How could you subtract someone to do the time of submitting a report higher than you? Alright? So we want to be, first of all, we're saying here that we need to be fair in our declarations. As honest, and we're not trying to close a company down. We're not trying to close someone down. We understand that what? A business generates what? Wealth in the country. It stimulates growth within the country. And so we're here to make sure that we work with under the parameters of what's inside our act. So from the Ministry of Works, you are now working with, you have 3 contracts. You not only have that one company. I've gotten this little strange thing where the person say, well, I'm not charging VAT on my, I have my daughter, I open up a store for, do a little sewing and everything. If that company is under your legal structure, I am Dexter and I have 3 companies, all of them need to be charging VAT if you are a VAT registered. All right? So what we would ask from Ministry of the Works is to ensure when there is a tendering process, you ask them first of all for a valid business license, correct? Right? Even if it's a select tendering process, right? I don't have to go any further. You will ask for a valid business license. And that valid business license and registration, a certificate to show if you are a TIN or a VAT, right? And then you know if the person's submission to the department will allow for them to put in what figure. I didn't want to say VAT. All right? So the submission is just clear of what they're doing. Your internal quant survey figures is internal to you. And when they submit, Ms. Pager will come in and talk about how a person who's doing VAT claims those inputs and compared to someone who's not a VAT registered. They have to absorb those fees in the cost that they submit. Now, the next thing is you come next week. You was X last week. I was Dexter last week, and this year I come in as Dexter D. All right, I changed my name, doing the same nature, same business. The Business License Act states that that is not a new company. It's called a continuation. And so your taxes continue. Your real property tax continues. Even, let me tell you a secret, even in death, when you go through probate, those taxes remain. All right? So you come to us and you say you are new, you are Mr. Dexter D now. Okay, fine, use Dexter D. You need to go down to physical planning, get a new letter for Dexter D, new location. I need you to also get a new letter for Dexter D's work, national insurance registration. Ding dong, national insurance tells us, oh, that person has a previous company and they have an outstanding fees that we are about to carry them to court. Should I be registering that company? No. Damn my business. I register you, but you continue on with the taxes. So don't come, I'm following the law. It says it's a continuation of the company, and so what we do, we have to add the back taxes. All right? So the law gives us one thing, says if you do not file the declaration of your business license before January 31st, there is called a late fee. If we don't do this, people will continue to do the same thing. They say they're doing the same thing, the same way it's doing what? So previously, we was just sitting down there, no one care, no interest on it. So first thing we slapped on is a late fee, right? So if you don't pay by March 31st, we put on a 1 for 10% late payment fee. And of 2017 Business License Act Amendment, there is a £5 compound interest that comes in at the end of April, all right? So what we're asking for you to do, file on time, pay on time, and work within the parameters of the license that you've been given. File, pay, work within that license. And if you feel you want to be a VAT registered or you feel that you're going to grow at some point, that you're going to make that more than 100,000, the option is to become a VAT registered. I think that's enough talking for me for this morning. So it's easy. Some people might just be getting into the business and want to go through our process. It's easy as a handheld device. It's an app. You go into inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs and you can walk through the steps on your phone. Take pictures of the necessary documents, upload them, PDF, the various files, and within reasonable 7 working days, you could have a business license. All right? So I'll open the floor if there are any concerns or questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe I should use this. First of all, very clear, I appreciate these clarifications. As you know, in Mistrix, we deal with all kinds of contractors from multi-million-dollar multinational corporations to one-man bands who are doing things. One of the common concerns we used to get in the past was that it takes too long to review the process, or you give me a license for 1 month, I gotta go drive down, come back to it every month, do this, do that, do the next thing. Have you now, first of all, is that valid? Have you now resolved, what's happening to resolve that issue? Okay. And secondly, just so the expert matters, when you have a person who's doing the so-called continuation, do we sort of, they come in under $100,000, but we know they're about to get a contract for $200,000 or $5,000, and they're saying, well, you know, I ain't really compliant yet, but once I get the contract, then I'll use some of that money to pay my fees. Okay.
I'll do FIFO with you. No, like do LIFO with you. The last one I'm going to answer first. So, if as the person who's reviewing the contract bids, and you see that this company meets other standards. Now, the standard is this: if you're not VAT registered, if it is reaching that level and you know that this person needs to be VAT registered and they're not, you have the obligation to inform them that they need to register to proceed any further with the contract negotiations. If you know the person is $97,000 now, and this contract for cleaning the dump is going to put them at $450,000, what you got to do? Make sure that they have the correct documentation. So make sure that you get that documentation before you issue that contract. So what is the requirements before you issue that first 10%? What is it now? It's still 10% mobilization fee. It's still 10%?
10 on the event.
10 to 20, oh, depends on the contract. Before you get a mobilization, a payment out, you should have all the proper documents. And the proper documents is you have a certificate from us stating that they're VAT registering.
I can't get it yet because I ain't got no money right now.
Well then, we willing to work with you. I can't get it yet. So that means that that person is outstanding. When they tell you I can't get it yet, they should have not been in the contract negotiation. They should not have made it that far. I can't get it yet, or if you hear someone in your first question saying that they have to go down to us every month, that means that they are on a month-to-month because they are outstanding with a regulator. We have reached down to the point of issuing VAT certificates for TCCs, which means that you're compliant with immigration, not just us, immigration, customs, road traffic, NIB, real property tax, business license. So if one company tells me stop because immigration says they have not paid for outstanding taxes for that period, I have an obligation to say that's it. We will check you month to month until you assured us that we can rely on you to get 6 months. So that month to month person is telling you half the story. All right? So that means something is not compliant. So it's just like you in business, you're in private business. Will you be willing to give out someone money and knowing that they owe you? No. So let's go to agreement. We're not wanting to shut the company down. We're willing to work with companies with payment plans. The business license department has come up with a wonderful plan where if you pay 25%, if you put at the initial payment plan, you put down 25%, and we work with you with a 6-month plan to pay back the taxes, we will give you a compliance certificate. But don't come with the payment plan and then 1 month later, push crack. Or we reach the extent, and that's why I wished your FO was here, that we reach the extent that if the person is getting the payment, if they're getting the payment plan, or you are wanting to validate this person to go on to the next step of receiving the contract, we can go ahead and we can have a deduct directly from your payment from Ministry of Works. That sound better? So we can come up with a level. If you know every month the person's going to get $14,000, okay, 10,000 go to us, 4,000 go to them. Oh, we work or whatever. But it makes sense. I constantly give you the contract, and you don't even know if that person has all the skills necessary to handle this contract. And we have a bill. You have a bill with me. We talk about it. Let's look at this from a national standard. Debt to GDP ratio. Are we going to improve that if we constantly have this bleeding? This person jicking you. I put a band-aid, no man, I can do better. I can pay next month. Next month come, change the number, change the phone, and we can call the police to go to the place. Or the staff saying, I'm not speaking to you, you have to call, come back when the boss man around.
Behia, you had a question?
I have a couple questions.
Couple.
I'll start with one and then rotate. So,
And
you have required, so,
Behia, before you go, we still have another presenter, so
You wanna just-
let's try not to.
yeah, I'll just save the rest for the end.
If it's something that we can answer right now.
Well, yeah, it actually directly was talking about the requirements for a business license, especially when it comes to talking about heavy equipment operators. It started a couple of years ago and it continued on up until this year, where we have paving contractors, contractors who handle asphalt, and so when they even though that they've been existing for many years within the system, on their business license, and they offer paving, asphalt services, etc. When they went to go renew, especially for the new system, business license, the department kept on advising, saying, well, you need to get prove that you are on the official list from Ministry of Works. The problem is, no such list existed. When I went to the site, and I think there's like a 15-page or something page document where you like list out all the individual requirements from each agency you need to be on these particular place. When we went looked at Ministry of Works, I said these lists, we do not have an approved paving list, we do not have approved a certain list because we know the people within the industry because it's a small industry. But business license literally defined getting a license based on documents that didn't exist.
So let me clarify that. I'm glad because we've had this yesterday. What we're asking for is when this didn't just jump out of the sky, the requirements, okay? Those requirements were as a result of Ministry of Works. Okay, so there are multi-agencies that sit down and compile the document which you see. So Ministry of Works said for this industry, in order for it, what you are clearly in that example that you're saying for paving, any companies such as that are irregular vehicles, there is a vehicle approval that you approve that vehicle being on the streets, which is handled by Ms. Mullings, if she's still at that section.
No, I know.
She's gone. And then there is another one that where we require every year the VIN number of the vehicle that you've approved for certain sites. So what I'm saying to you is that in our system, and maybe this is something that you might have to talk with internally, in our system, we have the requirements that have been set by Ministry of Works. So I'm not going to fight with Ministry of Works, but the thing is, if a paving company, the certain requirements have been set by the regulator, and if it needs to be overridden, or maybe point taken, we might need to revisit the list and say that for these paving companies, these requirements no longer exist. And so we can adjust, but we have to go by what your industry, your Ministry of Works has sent for us to submit for each classification.
Well, just one point to that really briefly, because I won't go in deep with regards to who submitted those requirements. However, the people who had registered were already registered using for the permit to operate heavy equipment. They already had that. And the business license kept on insisting there was another list that was not, and this didn't happen to just one, this happened to multiple times. I even emailed about that, and this was through PS Higgs. And so I never got back to what the resolution was it for, but what I will do is just to make sure, I have the documents I downloaded from the site. If you don't mind, maybe if I can send it to somebody in Land Revenue so that they can clarify, so that we can see on our end what document we actually requested.
That's fine, we can start the conversation, but like we said, get it signed off with your PS of what is necessary for in terms of, because once it's signed off, we go with it.
All right, like I say, we have one more presenter. Let's try to stick a pin in that here, Mr. Fernando, and we could get back to that after Ms. Gardner is finished with her presentation. All right.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So I'll just pick up by introducing you to a few basic terms that speak to the fundamentals of value-added tax. And so output VAT, these are some terms that you will commonly hear. So output VAT, which is collected by the registered tax person on taxable goods and supplies and services, this is essentially the VAT that you charge and collect on the supply of your goods and services. So input VAT, which is paid by the registered taxpayer on taxable imports or taxable domestic purchases. And if you're a VAT registrant, this is what you'll be able to claim back on your VAT return. And the tax period is essentially what you are assigned when you register for that. So you will either be assigned to a monthly filing frequency or quarterly. So taxable person. A taxable person can be a sole proprietor, a partnership, a government agency, a non-profit agency, corporation. And the taxable supplies are the supplies used in the course of or the furtherance of a taxable activity. And when you provide your taxable supplies, you would provide them at the current VAT rate based on the VAT Act. And that would be either by 0% or 12%. And your turnover, you would have heard Mr. Fernandez speak about your turnover. So the VAT Act defines the turnover as the total revenue in money and money's worth accruing to a person from his taxable activities, including all cash, cash sales, commission, without deductions whatsoever. So it's not your profit, it's your gross, it's your total revenue. No deduction of expenses or any costs. So you may ask, when should you register for VAT? So in accordance with Section 19 of the Value Added Tax Act, you are able to register for VAT if the total of your taxable activity, if your turnover exceeds the mandatory registration threshold of $100,000. Under Section 20 of the Value Added Tax Act, a person may register for VAT if they are under $100,000, if they choose to register for VAT. And we call that person a voluntary registrant. If you register under Section 19, if the turnover exceeds $100,000, then you are considered a mandatory VAT registrant. Once you register for VAT, once you submit the application and you are approved, you will be assigned a tax identification number, which is a unique number to each registrant. You will receive, along with that approval, a value-added tax certificate, which you are to display in your business. If you're contracting, you may not have a physical location. You should at least have your VAT certificate with you so that if your client asks for proof that you're a registrant, you're able to show them your certificate. Now, once you're registered for VAT, that means that you are allowed to claim the input VAT on your purchases, whether domestic or if you import any goods or supplies. Now, you may ask, do you need to register for VAT? So as I said, we have a category called a voluntary registrant. So those who are under $100,000, they have an option. They may choose that, hey, I don't think that I need to register for VAT, and so they may choose to register for a tin only. So, which is the second category of registrant. If you decide not to register for VAT, you must be aware that you cannot charge or collect VAT on the supply of your services or the sale of your goods. So it's essentially a business decision that you will have to make to understand what is required of you once you become a VAT registrant, because there are certain things that you're obligated to do once you become a VAT registrant. So once you're a VAT registrant, you must issue VAT invoices or VAT sales receipts on all goods or services rendered. And there are certain things that, in accordance with the Act, should be on your invoice, and I'll get to that shortly. You must file your tax returns by the due date. Failure to file a tax return will result in a late filing penalty being issued and interest charges being levied. And the same goes for payment of those taxes. So you must file and pay by the deadline to avoid late payment penalties and any interest charges. You must also maintain proper records and documentations of your invoices issued, the purchases that the business has made, and any other documentation or records that the business will need or that the department may require of you. In the event that we do an audit, we may ask for certain documentation. We would ask that you provide certain things to us, in accordance with the Act, of course. So the VAT invoice is really the document that you will issue to another VAT registrant.